a way of determining which of all the different diet theories works best in an individual. So if you were asking me for the sort of thumbnail sketch of the whole thing, or the executive summary, it would be that blood type carries enough information for you to determine which of all the competing diet theories is going to be the one that's best suited for you.
Highly individual program. And so let's just, I interrupted you, but we were talking about what are the distinguishing factors
Characteristics, sure.
O, A, B.
Well, let's start with the most common one. Now, this varies from country to country, and certain ethnic groups have different blood type distributions as well. But it's generally assumed that in most populations, type O is the most common blood type. In America, it's about 40 to 45% of the population right there. Type O is probably an immunologically very simple blood type. It has an inherent tendency immunologically to be prone more towards inflammation. It's a blood type that does well on high protein type diets as long as the protein sources are very clean. So for instance, with this blood type, deep ocean fish that's rich in omega fatty acids, grass-fed free-range lean meats, New Zealand lamb, organic free-range poultry, these kind of foods are a great source of nutrition because this particular blood type over the years has evolved the capabilities of breaking down animal protein far better than the other blood types. Studies have shown, for instance, since the 1950s that people who are group O have higher levels of stomach acid. They have enzymes in their intestinal tract that break down fat that the other blood types don't possess. This enzyme in the intestinal tract also breaks down cholesterol in the diet. Interesting that this same enzyme is responsible for absorbing calcium. And in type O, it's not activated unless there's a small amount of fat in the diet. So a type O on a low-fat diet is going to have complications with regard to their calcium absorption. So here's one part of the spectrum. You know, here's 44% of the population that are going to do fairly well on what people call the sort of low-carb type diet, low-carb, high-protein type diet. Almost 1 out of 2 people will do fairly well on that.
But I knew someone who's a vegetarian. Can that be done? You don't recommend it, do you?
It really depends on what level of pathology the person's experiencing. I have occasionally had people who've run up to me and proclaimed very vociferously that they're type O vegetarians and they never felt better, and you know, what does that do to your theory? And it really ultimately doesn't do very much because health can be sustained in a lot of different levels at a lot of different ways. So ultimately having a healthy vegetarian who's type O, you know, it's possible. The difficulty arises if the person's so wed to that belief system that if they all of a sudden were not working well and if they all of a sudden did have some sickness, would they still stick with that? And the perfect example of that is the guy who helps me with my website, who was a 3-time vegetarian trivia champion for the United States and head of the Houston Vegetarian Society, who had an autoimmune disease called pemphigus, where his immune system was actually attacking his skin. Normally it's a very lethal disease and people often die. And he kept trying to be a better and better vegetarian, and he got sicker and sicker. Until a couple of years ago, he just happened on the first book I wrote, Eat Right, and he looked at it and he said, well, I've tried everything else, I suppose I should try this. And his pemphigus went into remission. And he had an interesting phrase at one point which he told me, which was that he was not prepared to die for the cause. So if indeed you are a vegetarian type O, you can probably say that if you feel well, maybe you can persist a while longer. But if something unravels, how willing are you going to be to maybe change your belief system a little bit?